Hey guys, welcome back. It's Directing Pete here. We're going to go ahead and deep dive into advanced storms for, you got it, Zone Wars. I want to make sure you guys completely understand the concept of how this works and how we can go ahead and create the perfect zones for our Zone Wars map, because without zones, we don't have Zone Wars. So let's go ahead and dive in. Alright guys, before we dive into this video, I want you to understand this is a companion piece to a main video I made called How to Create a Zone Wars Map. Make sure to check that out. I put the link here above at the top. Go ahead and click on that. Make sure you watch that first before watching this video. This is the more advanced video and it's the companion piece to the longer How to Make a Zone Wars Map video. Some of you may remember me from being on the block back in Season 7 and Season 9, and I'm glad to be back here now making YouTube videos for you guys on how to make cool stuff. Make sure to check out my Zone Wars map here for some inspiration before we jump into deep diving on advanced storm circles. I use this technique in my Zone Wars map. Alright, so the first thing we're going to need to do is go over to our devices menu and go ahead and choose an advanced storm controller. That's the first thing we're going to need to make this work. Without the advanced storm controller, we don't have a storm. We don't want to use the basic storm controller in Zone Wars because we really want to customize where the storm goes every single time. And that's what I'm going to show you now. Guys, we have to move from basic options over to all options for this. So make sure you switch over to all options. Now going down one, we want to choose storm phases custom from default. So make sure it's set to custom. That's very important. Custom is going to make sure that we control the way the storm goes, and we want to have full control of that, all right? So we're going to make sure that is set to custom. Phase 1 radius. What this means is where is that phase 1 radius going to begin? I'm going to choose 100 meters. Delay time. Delay time is something you can do if you want to go ahead and change when the storm actually begins in the game. I will be changing this later to 5 seconds, but for now I'll leave it to none. On behavior, on finish behavior, what do you want to do? Do you want to destroy the storm instantly? Do you want to keep it on stay? In this case, I'm going to keep it on stay because in a traditional game, when the storm completely closes, it stays. It doesn't just go away. Bound radius, this actually has nothing to do with what we're working on in Zone Wars. This is for different game modes, and the rest is completely up to you if you want to do anything with it, but for Zone Wars, none of these options are needed. So we're going to go ahead and skip those and move on to the next step. Alright, now we're going to go ahead and grab our next device, which is an Advanced Storm Beacon. Now the Advanced Storm Beacon does play along with the Advanced Storm Controller. These two go together like peas in a pod. This is probably the most confusing part. You'll see right now that storm circle right there indicates how big the storm is. You'll notice as we go down here, the end radius is 5. That's really small. So for our, first storm circle, we want to bump that up. Our wait time indicates how long it takes before the storm kind of starts to shrink. Resize time is how fast the first storm circle is going to come in. 25 seconds currently. The damage amount, 5%. Movement behavior. We absolutely want to make sure this is set to move to beacon, not move randomly. It has to be set to move to beacon because we want to control where the storm goes. Now these bottom two options do not matter if we have move to beacon selected, so we're going to ignore those two options. It is very important to note that that first phase 1 beacon we dropped actually doesn't do very much. It doesn't really shrink the storm the way we want. It completely ignores everything we want to do. So what we're going to do is create a copy, okay? We're going to create another copy of this storm beacon. And the only difference is we're going to change that to phase 2. Phase 2 means it's the next circle. End radius, well, if it's going longer and longer, right, we want the circle to shrink more and more. Usually, at least in a Battle Royale map, that's how it works, and in Zone Wars as well. So we want to shrink the zone a little bit. We want to make the damage a little more intense. We want the resize time to change, right? Because a lot of you have mentioned in some of my comments that your resize times are going way too fast. The storm's way too fast. So I'm going to show you how that all works right now. But just by changing some of those options, you're going to see right now how this works. So I'm flying in. Now, if you notice, I placed a storm beacon right there on that white square, but you notice that it's actually not going to that white square first. It's going to phase 2 first. This is the most important concept, guys. Your phase 1 storm doesn't mean anything, and that doesn't make much sense. And I agree, I think the way they wrote the weapon, or the way they wrote this was a little sloppy, but the first phase actually takes you from the first phase to the second phase immediately. So if you set the radius on your first phase of the storm, it doesn't actually listen to you at all. It completely ignores what you want to do and goes right to phase 2. Alright, so moving on, I'm going to go ahead and grab another copy of this storm beacon, and we're going to create yet another circle. We're going to keep going down the line here. We're going to go from phase 2 to phase 3. The end radius, we're going to go from 10 to 5, and we're going to keep shrinking the storm circle. Resize time, 10 seconds. So guys, that resize time is what's going to make your storm go either super fast or super slow between storm. So let's go ahead and try again. We're going to start the game, and guys, as you will notice once again, the first beacon completely gets ignored. The only information the first beacon on phase 1 explains to how it works is how fast should it get to phase 2. You'll notice that we go right to phase 2 if you look there, so the phase 1 sizing doesn't mean anything. I'm going to keep bringing this up and kind of explaining it in different ways because it's kind of confusing. It actually took me a really long time to wrap my head around this. Honestly, until almost recording today, it took me a while to really understand how this all works, and it can get a little frustrating. But you see there, it just stopped on phase 2. And now we're moving to phase 3. So we're going to keep going over to phase 3 now. Alright, so we're going to continue over to phase 3. And then the time that you set on the resize on phase 3 is going to be how fast the storm circle closes on you as the final circle before the game ends. So I chose, I believe, see, I have these 5-second buffers between storm circles. You can set that buffer as well. I have mine at 10 seconds. You can see that there. Moving on. Now, if we go ahead and go to my old map, this is my Camp Overlook map. I want you to see the menu options here. Everything looks exactly identical here. The only difference is I have a channel in there because I have some more advanced mechanics. I'll go into that in a later video, but it all looks the same, exactly the same as our example. This is the first storm circle, but once again, if you look at my first storm circle, even on my map, you will notice that when we play the actual game, it doesn't go to that first phase 1 storm circle. It goes right to phase 2, as you'll see here. Alright, now we're going to go ahead back and verify that all of our stats look very similar to the Camp Overlook Zone Wars. Now these are going to vary, guys, in your own game. If you match exactly what I'm doing in your Zone Wars, the storm may be too fast, it may be too slow, the wait time may be too fast or too slow. It is up to you guys to play around with these settings. Change your wait time and change the storm resize time over and over on each of your phases until you get something that works. Otherwise, guys, it's going to be too fast, too slow. This took the longest time for me to do in my Zone Wars map. It took so much tweaking, and that's exactly what we're doing here. So the next thing I want to bring up here are our damages. So if you notice, I did 5% damage for the first storm circle. The second storm circle, I moved it up to 7%, and at the end circle here, I moved it up to 10. You can do that as well. That makes the storm more and more difficult as it goes on, just like a traditional battle royale game, but in Zone Wars. So we want to make sure this feels realistic. In my Camp Overlook Zone Wars, I keep it at 5 the whole time because I want people to have fun and not fear the storm as much. I also have a huge map where you get stuck in the storm a lot more, and in my map, I find it important to have less damage because of that. If your map is smaller, you may want to do the opposite, where you have bigger damage. You saw how fast that storm also sized down. Did you see how fast that storm came in just now in the video? We can slow that down as well, because that was way too fast. I'll show you how to do that after this example. But you'll notice here that if I run into the storm, I'm going to be taking damage, and because this is the first storm circle, we're only at 95%, so we're hitting 5% damage. Now if I were to go into the storm, it would be 7% damage, and so on. But we're going to go to the advanced storm beacon now and make that one last adjustment where we make the resize time from 10 seconds up to 25 seconds. That will make sure that circle doesn't go so dang fast. And just a reminder, that was on the first storm beacon there that I changed the timing. So we're going to go ahead and start the game now on that first phase 1 storm beacon. And you'll notice that that resize time that went from 10 seconds will now be 25 seconds. And remember that circle I just told you to remember in the last game shrunk so fast. And now we're at 25 seconds. So it's more realistic. It's a little bit slower. People have time to build and fight and have fun and not be so worried about the storm. Which is really important when you're doing Zone Wars. You do not want that zone going too fast. You can see how much more elegantly it's coming in now. I really hope that this tutorial helped you understand storm circles a little bit more. I know there's a lot to understand here, but the big takeaway is a phase 1 storm circle doesn't really exist. It's a combination of that advanced storm beacon. Those two kind of go together, so you can stack them next to each other on top of each other because they basically are one unit when you're first starting. So the storm, when it begins, is going to go to the phase 2 storm first, even though you still need to create a phase 1 storm beacon. If you have questions, please ask them in the comments below. Also, feel free to join my Discord. It's in the comments below. You can ask me questions there as well.